Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Dominique Wong Weekend Show, where we have grassroots conversations about current affairs. Today, we have YB Lim Yi Wei, who is ADUN and State Assemblywoman for Kampung Tunku, who is kind enough to join us today to share with us her personal journey as an ADUN, the role she plays as a State Assemblywoman, and the changing face of politics in Malaysia. So once again, thank you so much for joining us today, YB. We are so excited to meet you. To start off, would you like to share with us your background and journey before today, becoming an ADUN?
Okay, right. So hi everyone. Thanks Dominic for having me on your show. For the viewers on my page as well who haven't met Dominic, actually he's a resident of Kampung Tunku as well. So it's pretty cool to have this conversation. My background is rather straightforward. I grew up in Ipoh, family of teachers. Like a typical Asian kid, I did the usual study hard, go to a good university and hopefully get a good job. So after finishing my degree in Hong Kong, I started working. And at that time, during my final year final exams, 2013, that was like GE 13. And although I started working after I graduated, I still wasn't very happy about what was happening in Malaysia. So long story short, I decided that I wanted to be more than a keyboard warrior. And so I moved back to Malaysia. I was lucky to be able to work under YB Tonipo, who's the MP of Damansara, as his political secretary. And then I became a councillor for MBPJ. And then when the general elections came around the corner, I was very fortunate to be selected as one of the candidates. Got selected as the candidate for DUN Kampung Tunku, and here I am today.
Wow, that's amazing. YB, did your parents comment on your decision to move away from a corporate job to become ADUN? Did they comment? What was their reaction?
Actually, initially they were very concerned because they were like, we send you, you got a scholarship to go overseas, and we're hoping that you will not come back unless you have a really good job in an MNC. But of all things, you join politics, and of all things, you join opposition politics and the DAP. Yeah, so they were very concerned at the beginning.
Yep, it has been a tough decision, I can imagine, but it has been for a good cause, and everyone now is very happy to have you as ADUN for Kampung Tunku. Before we start off asking about the role of ADUN, maybe I can give a background about the role of an ADUN, how many seats we have. Apparently, we have 56 state seats in the Selangor State Legislative Assembly. And the first one, Negeri 1, is Sungai Air Tawar, that's in the north, that's Sabak Bernam. And then all the way to 56 in the south, I think that's Sungai Pelek, and that's in Sepang, correct? Sepang. Mm-hmm. So we have 22 total seats. So YB Lim Yi Wei will represent Kampung Tunku. Is that N35?
Yes, 35.
Yes, N35. Yeah, amazing. Maybe you can enlighten us for those viewing, what is the exact role of an ADUN? How do they represent constituencies like Kampung Tunku in the state government? What is the organization like? Yeah.
So if we think of it very broadly, I hope everyone knows that we have members of parliament that we elect at the federal level. So a state assembly person is basically a state MP. So we work on the state government, and our duty is to actually create legislation or amend legislation, and also policies for how the state government is run. So that's the long short of it. But in reality, we actually do a lot more. Malaysia not being a first world country yet, we actually focus less on legislation, unfortunately. And we do a lot of welfare work. So that's why you always see the term like turun padang, and sometimes people have this impression that the more the YB comes to all kinds of events like ribbon cutting events, that means they're doing a good job, but that might not necessarily be the case. So I guess as an ADUN, for me, it's about finding balance to think about good policies, but also to be very present in the community.
Okay, thank you for sharing with us your story. Can you share something about Kampung Tunku's history?
Kampung Tunku is a really interesting place actually for me. When I first got nominated for Kampung Tunku, so I mean, although I had operated in PJ as YB Tony staff,
Yes.
my initial impression of Kampung Tunku was like house, and then shop. It's very neighborhood, very suburban. Uh, but when I became ADUN also, I thought, there must be something interesting about this place. And as I campaigned during GE14, I actually found out a lot of interesting stories about Kampung Tunku. So, for example, our first Prime Minister, Tunku Abdul Rahman, he actually officiated the SK Kampung Tunku. And he also actually officiated the launching of the housing co-op in SS1, which is called Kampung Tunku Abdul Rahman, back in the 1960s, if I'm not mistaken. And we have the fifth and sixth generations of Kapitan Yap Aloy living in our dune. We also have a lot of distinguished civil servants, so military generals, ex-chairman of EPF, and also the current Karangkraf chairman, Datuk Husamuddin, so also of Sina Harian, also is a resident. So when I was talking to them, then we realized there are all these like interesting bits and pieces of Kampung Tunku history where it evolved from being mostly like palm oil and rubber estates to becoming a place where the government then allocated houses for civil servants. And then it's become, certain parts of Kampung Tunku such as Sea Park and Taman Paramount and also SS2 have become really active, dynamic commercial centers. So yeah, it's very cool to see, that progression, and we're very, excited to be a part of it.
Yep. I see so many activities going on in Kampung Tunku. Every time if I drive, I'll see like YB Lim Yi Wei's banner for a talk, a discussion, even like Politico. I think we had a card game before.
Yeah.
So many
that
good
was a
events
cool
going
event.
Yeah. I look forward to more events like this as well. And okay, back to your work as an ADUN. Do you collaborate, for example, with other ADUNs from other zones or other constituencies? Do you collaborate with federal MPs? Because you mentioned Kampung Tunku is within Damansara. Do you collaborate with local councillors in MPPJ, for example? What is your relationship? Because I imagine an MPPJ councillor will do more of that ribbon cutting or the drainage or the street lighting, and then the ADUN will usually be doing policy. So as you mentioned as well, I think there's some overlap. So what is the relationship like between the different federal, state, and local city council?
So I guess we have to establish the premise that actually a lot of people don't realize that the local councillor exists. Maybe it's a bit better in PJ, but in general, the community's outlook is, I voted for you, so all my problems, I will come to you. So for us, there is no wrong door, and in terms of how we work with each other, MP, ADUN, and also councillor, is we have to be very open and be able to always communicate with each other to make sure that even if there's a very like tiny problem, let's say rubbish not collected for 3 days, reaches YB Tony, he can pass it over to Nalina, who's one of my councillors whom we interviewed yesterday, and Nalina will take care of it. So for us, it's always about keeping lines of communication open. In terms of my day-to-day, I would say that YB Tony as an MP is quite, he doesn't micromanage. So most of the standard infrastructure, cleanliness, safety, I do work closer with the councillors because they are the ones who deal with MBPJ. But in terms of more complex matters where I need federal assistance, that's when I raise it up to YB Tony as and when necessary. Relationship to MBPJ. So I was a councillor with MBPJ before, so we did have a working relationship, and it really helps as an ADUN to still keep informed about what happens in MBPJ, because the decisions that are made in the local council have very tangible effects on people's life, such as rubbish collection, fixing of potholes, drains, lights. Yeah.
Yes, yes. So many issues. I can see you're working with councillors, working with different ADUNs, working with the MP. It's a very full job with comprehensive scope of work and duties. Maybe you can illustrate with us what's your average work schedule like as an ADUN? What you do on Mondays to Fridays? You work on weekends?
Every day is different. Every day is different. If we don't have meetings outside or nowadays online because of MCO, then most of the time I will be in office. The other times which take me out of the office would be when we do site visit or also house visits to needy constituents. Yeah, so like if there is, let's say, an uncle who's very sick and maybe needs a wheelchair, to verify all this, we will usually do house visits. Yeah. So yes, I do work on weekends also, but it's about finding balance also, and I also try to give balance to my staff. So for example, if let's say we do, I mean back in the days before MCO, when we do physical programs, and if it finishes late, then I'll say, you know what, you all can come in later tomorrow, like instead of 9 a.m. come in 11 a.m. or maybe even half day. Yeah. So we try to find a balance that way.
Okay. So from what I gleaned, from what you said, you do events, you attend to constituents who come to you at your service center, you attend meetings, what else is part of a job scope of an ADUN, if you can list that down?
So the first and foremost, obviously, is to make legislation and policies for the state. The second thing is, I think, to be an effective communicator of state policies and also state welfare schemes. So we always try to encourage people to apply for the state government schemes if you qualify according to the T&Cs, because the budget's already there. The state has already allocated this much, for example, for like the Jom Shopping SMUE. So if you're a senior citizen or an OKU, then seize that benefit. We want you to utilize that benefit. And one of the things we in Kampung Tunku try to do is we try to market as much of our material in at least 3 or 4 languages,
Yes.
because we don't want anyone to be left out as much as possible. So sometimes it's like quite funny we spend a lot of time checking for our Mandarin, our BM, our English, and also Tamil, to make sure that no one's left behind. So yeah, number 2 is effective communicator of state policies, and number 3, to be a reliable source of help, I guess, to be able to channel people's complaints to the right agencies. So if it's not within our jurisdiction, so a lot of people, sometimes they come to us with problems that are under the bidang kuasa of other agencies, for example, tax department. But as much as possible, we refer them there and also help them follow up when needed. Yeah.
Okay. So you are the first door when your constituents need to seek help and do not know where to start, for example.
A lot of times we are, yeah. And because our office also is known locally as DAP Selangor, so everyone comes there when they want to find DAP. But it's good because then we get to hear and also again be able to help channel issues to our neighbor ADUNs, etc.
Yep. Kampung Tunku is a strategic location. Maybe next on the list, could you share with us some of the most passionate issues that you have been campaigning about as ADUN?
So the things that I have been most vocal about would be women and children's issues, and also mental health, and also public health. I think these 4 issues are basically the building blocks of our society, and then the 5th one would be on infrastructure, making sure that Kampung Tunku is a safe, conducive place for people to work, live, and travel in. But going back to women and children's issues, it's not easy, And a lot of times it is quite hard to follow because there are a lot of variabilities. But I feel as a lawmaker, these are the groups that need more protection, and there's a lot that we can do to change systemically. The same with mental health also. It's not an easy topic to deal with because there's a lot of stigma. I personally feel that we should go beyond awareness, and we should start, coming up with our intervention programs, especially since we are an MCO 3.0 and a lot of people are feeling stressed. If you are feeling stressed, I really encourage you all to reach out to helplines such as Talian Kasih 15999 or Befrienders. And also, public health is something that I've been quite vocal about, especially with the rise of COVID. So before COVID came along, also we used to promote extensively the PK B40 scheme, which is under the Ministry of Health, and we also did screening programs under that. With COVID, I think it's so important to have the right information out there. So sometimes if you see like me being fierce and like scolding people about disseminating fake news, please know that it's for your best interest. Because the impact of fake news is really real. When we don't have a kesadaran of public health. I had this clinic in Taman Paramount call me, and he was really upset because some random uncle from nowhere, just posted and say, oh, this clinic got positive case. Padahal they actually dealt with a patient who came in for, had fever, came in for dengue test, and then also did a COVID test, but it wasn't the staff that was positive, that kind of thing. So yeah, that's why I'm very passionate about public health, because right information saves lives. Yeah.
Yep, definitely. What you mentioned, I can totally relate. Because, for example, our parents, they're retired, they're at home. Then what they do, they actually just on forward what they share without verifying first. So that's why you get cases like in the clinic reporting false COVID cases, and then the person coming to you saying they had this problem with someone spreading news that isn't 100% true. So you also mentioned women issues. I think you have been campaigning very vocally about not normalizing rape jokes in Malaysia. So for everyone's benefit, just a background to the case of Ain Husniza. So apparently the teacher was teaching in class a module on sexual abuse and sexual harassment. But ironically, the teacher also made a sexual rape joke whereby if students want to rape, don't rape under 18, rape someone over 18. And then allegedly, like the girls were a bit shocked and the guys were laughing. And then when he went to the counselor for help over this as well, the counselor told Ain this is normal for girls to feel a bit sensitive, but it's so normal for guys, students to make crude remarks in jest. So I think this whole culture is something that you are against, YB Lim. Do you have any comments on what's happening and following up on this case of Ain Husniza?
All right. So what's upsetting now is that after Ain went to TikTok about the rape joke from the teacher, she received subsequently received rape threats, and she was also invited to give an interview on Malaysia Kini with her dad accompanying. And if you go to like the Malaysia Kini BM site where the post is on, you see that actually some of the commenters responded with like rape jokes, and had a lot of obscene comments about her body. So after that, she decided to take a break off school. But the latest is that she has received a letter of expulsion for failing to attend school. So to me, this is a very worrying case. And Ain is just, she is the current face for the problem. But many students have gone through this situation where they raise up a complaint and they are not protected. So one of the things we are doing obviously is to show support and solidarity for Ain, and also we need to get the school to actually revoke that letter, because
Yes.
um, it looks like all figures of authority are basically, letting her down. When she went, like you said, when she went to the school counselor said, it's okay lah, boys like that, and apologize on behalf of the offending teacher, which I think is not the place of the school counselor to do that. If the offending teacher is really sorry, then the person should say sorry. Like that, he shouldn't be covered. He or she shouldn't be covered by anyone else. That's the first thing, and then the Ministry of Education has been woefully silent. The Women's Minister has been absolutely silent. The Deputy IGP of Police, who's now the IGP, was quoted in a press conference saying, "Oh, maybe the classmates' rape threat was just a joke." And also recently, the NUTP Secretary General was very defensive on Astro Awani's show, although he has since apologized for it. But we can see that all levels of authority have been letting Ain down. And this is actually very worrying, because sexual harassment and rape are not joking material. I just wrote an article, whether we are failing our children, and one of the things that I highlighted in there, which I hope does give a punch to people and their awareness, is whether you have actually met a real rape victim. So I have met a child rape victim, and she was like tiny. She was tiny. She was so young, and yeah, it really, meeting her and talking to her really made me want to like punch a wall lah. Because she was prostituted for 3 years by her father to his friends. So these are not jokes. These are not girls just being sensitive. It's a very real culture that we should be worried about, and we should be supporting students who actually voice out on this. Because the effects of sexual harassment and also rape last a lifetime.
Definitely. I think we have a problem with victim blaming in Malaysia, whereby we sometimes ignore the issue and cite the perpetrator. And like previously, I think our higher education minister, Matzia Khalid, Dato Sri, said that it was only the tip of the iceberg. So moving forward, I think, like you mentioned just now, I think somehow the community must organize to get the school to rescind that letter of expulsion, and also find ways to engender a culture of respect for women, and to not take rape jokes lightly, and to prevent any repeat of such events.
Yeah.
I think following on this topic, right? Do you think it's a more systemic issue of sexism in Malaysia? Because previously in Parliament as well, I think we used to have some unsavory jokes in Parliament. I think someone mentioned, I think MP for Pasir Salat mentioned, in 2016 that MP for Seputeh it was making fun of the family name of that of MP for Seputeh, and then likewise also for the other issue, I think it was Batu Kawan, gelap nak nampak sila pakai bedak. So I mean, issues like this don't only happens in schools; it also happens in federal parliament. So what can we do to actually make a bigger change on this respect?
One of the things is, in Parliament they do have standing orders against sexist remarks, and also like certain swear words, so that can be enforced, that can be called to by MPs and enforced by the speaker. So that's one thing, to censure the offending MP. But I would say that the bigger issue is with homes and schools, because all these comments don't come from a vacuum. It's a systemic thing, where in certain quarters women are not looked on as being worthy of respect, and so there's a lot of education that needs to be done. But for me, I feel like we don't need a woman to be someone's sister, mother, daughter to actually view them as human beings. We should view women as, full and equal human beings who are able to make their own choices.
Yes, I agree with that as well. Under Pakatan Harapan, under the 2018 General Election Manifesto, was to implement a Gender Equality Act. And later it became a sexual harassment bill, and it was carried forward under the present government, which has not been implemented. Do you have any comments? How come the sexual harassment bill was not passed during the tenure of Pakatan Harapan in 2018?
Actually, we were going to bring it in March 2020, but then Langkah Sheraton happened. Yeah. So now that we're in 2021, just want to say open parliament. Let's table the bill. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. I think a little bit of background on this as well. I think Malaysia signed the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women in 1995. In 2006, the United Nations encouraged Malaysia to enact a Gender Equality Act, and again in 2018, and on both occasions, we have not. So I think it is high time. I think Malaysian women has waited for 15 years, and it's time to act and implement a similar bill, a Gender Equality Act or a Sexual Harassment Act. Do you have any idea how come the act is not called a Gender Equality Act and we have decided to have a Sexual Harassment Act instead?
Because sexual harassment, it has to be dealt in on its own, in which the sexual harassment bill actually provides for a tribunal of sorts to be able to settle, to hopefully be able to settle disputes on sexual harassment. So you don't have to, you don't have to escalate all the way to civil courts. Why is it not part of a Gender Equality Act? Is because sexual harassment is a very specific area, which actually, I mean, if you put it under the Gender Equality Act, it does not mean that much, because males also can be subject to sexual harassment. So that's why, going back, it's a specific issue that should be dealt with on its own, with the appropriate, remediation methods.
Okay. Yeah, as a layperson view as well, because we have a Child Act in Malaysia, and then the government passed a Sexual Offences Against Children Act. So for me, I felt like it could be consolidated in one act rather than having two acts. And also, just for precedent, I think the UK has an Equality Act in 2010. So it's a single Equality Act that compels governments and private sectors and recognizes them to promote actively and also prevent actively sexual, not just sexual, all discrimination against nationality, gender, sexual orientation, and disability. So in the UK's precedent, it's all in one. So it comes across as slightly less ambitious, but I can imagine the different stakeholders involved in formulating this Sexual Harassment Act has come to a conclusion, and the bill that was tabled or is to be tabled.
Yeah, I think the Child Sexual Offences Act is actually a good one, because it quite clearly outlines the parameters of sexual offences towards a child. One of the the tricky areas to investigate and all is actually with regards to child grooming. So it's good that the Sexual Offences Act actually provides that, and it's a criminal one compared to the Child Act, so that can be pursued under criminal courts. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for sharing your views about sexism and not victim blaming in rape jokes in Malaysia. So now we can move on to something maybe a bit lighter, like what is the funniest thing that happened to you, in your job as an ADUN? What are the most memorable and interesting experiences as well?
Funniest, okay, actually I'm struggling to think of funniest.
Yeah. Did anyone mistaken you to be someone else, or if you're working in a role, something funny happened? Like, for example, maybe if a counselor was boring a tunnel or boring a road, and then she accidentally made an accident, or
Yeah, I'm actually really trying to think think of it. Fun. No one has really mixed me up with anyone. Oh, but I guess fun fact is that my Chinese name, the character Wei is actually usually used for males. So at the beginning, a lot of people would think that I'm a guy, and after that, when I turn out to meet them, they'll be like, "Hey, okay, you're Lim Yi Wei.
Oh,
I thought you were a man." Yeah.
now you mention it. Okay, yeah, because Lim Yi Wei can be both a man or a woman's name in Chinese. Okay, okay. Any memorable or what is the most interesting experience or the most interesting experience you have felt conducting your role as an ADUN?
I would say there are too many. Um, but one of the things we are currently working on, and hopefully, be able to see the end of this project, for lack of a better word, is that we are rehoming this man and his wife. Um, so we found out about him last year around July or August, also during the MCO. And he was actually living in a pondok or reban outside the house in which he used to rent a room. Uh, so yeah, for our notes, we used to call him Abang Reban. But yeah, Abang Reban was living in a very leaky shed and all. And so we started off with giving him food and buying him a gas stove, because yeah, he has a little setup outside. But it's very sad lah, because when it's hot, it's very hot, and when it rains, then it leaks, because he is living in a pondok. Um, and initially, an NGO offered to resettle him, but that fell through. And only recently we managed to move him somewhere else into a proper house before Raya. So I'm quite happy to see that. And then you might ask, wow, why did it take so long from July last year until May? I guess it taught me a few things. Like sometimes um, you can't force people to go along with their pace. So you give them what they need, and slowly encourage them, and then when they're ready to make the jump, then we can do it together. But yeah, so we've already given him the keys to the new place, and I'll be covering his rent for the first 6 months. He's already gotten back a job, so hopefully everything will just fall into place nicely. We're helping her out with zakat also. So yeah, I feel like, yeah, that's one project which makes me feel a bit like sentimental lah, because I felt so guilty. His pondok is in a house where a lot of people actually pass by as a shortcut if you're
Okay.
cutting through from Paramount to SS1. So it is in plain sight, but you always think that it's a garden shed, and you didn't know that someone lives inside there. So yeah, it's a very sobering but also memorable experience, and we are looking forward to seeing how to say, like 70% of it being done lah, like that, as he's already moved into the new place. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I think from what you said, I think the most inspiring thing is the ability to touch everyone's and everyday lives in your constituency. Like you mentioned, Taman Paramount, individual instances where they needed help, and you being able to be there for them. I think it's one of the most validating experience to be for an ADUN. And also, for anyone who is watching, you can leave your comments or questions in the comment section, and then maybe we can take a few comments to answer them later in this call. But following to our next question, what are the biggest challenges and success you have made in this role?
The biggest challenge is to communicate and be able to reach out, especially in an age of a lot of fake news. And also with the MCO, we haven't been able to meet people in person. And sometimes there are certain sectors of the community where WhatsApp or social media is not so much useful for them. You have to actually like be able to go down to their place and sit down with them and actually talk long. Then you find out what's the real problem. So that's a continuing challenge to always make sure that we don't miss out on anyone. What's the next one? Our biggest achievement. Biggest achievement, I would say outside. I mean, we've managed to get a few infrastructure projects done to make the place smoother and cleaner. I'm very proud of like our Sungai Wei Duta Bersih, who every day go and round with the MEPJ contractors and make sure Sungai Wei has become much cleaner in the past 2 years. But the other part, which I think counts as something, is we've managed to actually create a brand identity around Kampung Tunku. So we started using the hashtag straight out of Kampung Tunku in the style of straight out of Compton. But okay lah, Kampung Tunku is not Compton. It's just we like the sound. But it's become a thing where it's quite touching because we see like past residents or those who grew up in Kampung Tunku and are overseas, and they're excited to buy our t-shirts and the mask because it reminds them of home. So that's the feeling we wanted to get again, going back to the story of at first seeing Kampung Tunku as house and shop. Now we see it as a place that is vibrant, that has history, and that residents are proud to call home.
Yep. Thank you so much for sharing some of the work you have done in Kampung Tunku. As a PJ resident and Kampung Tunku resident myself, I'm very proud of the work that you have done. Some of the work that you have done currently, do you have any current plans moving forward that you plan to bring to Kampung Tunku?
Well, right now, one of the things we are working on is helping small entrepreneurs and SMEs to digitalize. So we've started this project, this initiative called the Kampung Tunku Micro Entrepreneurs Digital Initiative, with a startup, a co-working space called Paper and Toast, and also a platform provider called Yeza. So Yeza targets small business owners and SMEs who mostly operate on WhatsApp. So I'm actually sponsoring like 3 months of the Yeza subscription pack for small business owners to use, to test out, to see if it can actually help smoothen their business. Because let's say if you do business on WhatsApp and then sometimes people message you and like, oh, tolong PM size, or PM berapa stock, then you can actually like lose track of that. So what Yeza does is to actually help you send automated messages, be able to receive sales, and also feed that into a payment gateway so you don't lose track of your sales leads. So that's one thing we are working on. That's a major thing we're working on right now.
Yep. I think you have addressed quite a few issues in Kampung Tunku: infrastructure, parking. You also addressed the fact that you have to reach out to people who sometimes may not be on online platforms. So they want to make sure that your programs are inclusive, sitting down with people and talking to them, making sure no one is left out. I think all of these are very important. And also you mentioned e-commerce. So you have the future whereby people are trading, especially doing MCO online. So I think you cover that very nicely, having e-commerce and also having inclusion for elderly people, getting out there, helping individuals in Pondoks and Rabans, and making sure everyone is just included in Kampung Tunku. And yes, I must concede, I think Kampung Tunku is a very strong brand. Like straight out of Kampung Tunku now, I see the shirts sometimes when I walk around the market and things like that. And I think it's just a testament to the work that you have been doing on the ground, YB Lim, the past few years. Thank you for that. Finally, on the part of ADUN, what is your advice for young people who want to be involved in politics in the future and becoming ADUN?
I would say the first advice is don't go into politics with the sole purpose of being ADUN, because if you go in with that mindset, then you can set yourself up for disappointment, especially if your party doesn't choose you.
Yes.
The first thing is actually do intern with your local ADUN or MP to see what it's like. Read up on the dominant political ideologies in the world and also in Malaysia. And get a feel. I mean, it's fine to intern for various offices to get a feel of which political party and which office aligns best with your principles. But the first thing is, yes, definitely do intern with your local ADUN or MP. So I have had several interns, I think maybe more than 10 really now. But
Wow.
them do come back because they like being involved. Some of them realize that they are not so political, but they still help out with things such as translation or maybe doing social media. And some of them actually get scared from politics. So it's good to try first
Really?
before you go all head in. Yeah. Yeah. One of my ex-interns say, "Ayo, cannot lah, cannot handle lah, too busy lah, too many people come and ask me things."
Yep. But the time spent is definitely spent wisely and for the benefit of the people. So that's a very good thing. Also, maybe before we end the session about ADUN in Kampung Tunku and move on to state issues and national issues, maybe you can list out some of the initiatives that people who are watching now may access to. Like just now you mentioned Scheme Mesra, Usia Emas. So people who are elderly in a low-income family can reach out to your local ADUNs and register for a state aid. It could be for a few hundred ringgit. Am I right? Maybe you can elaborate more.
Right. So the Jom Shopping scheme, Mesra Usia Emas, is for senior citizens aged 60 years and above who are born in Selangor or have lived in Selangor, and also OKUs. For the OKU category, it doesn't matter what age you are. You'll be entitled to get 100 ringgit shopping voucher in your birthday month. So this one does not matter which ADUN or which DUN you vote in. You can come. So if you live within the PJ area or you live within DUN Kampung Tunku, you're very welcome to stop by the office or apply online. You can just Google Scheme Mesra Usia Emas and you should get the website at the top. That's the first one. Another one is Kad Ibu Smart Selangor, which is a Kad Kids. It is for single mothers, B40 moms, and also B40 families to apply for a card that allocates 200 ringgit for you to purchase groceries every month. For kids, you have to follow the ADUN's area which you vote in. So if you are Kampung Tunku voter, can come to me. If you are Bukit Gasing voter, you have to go to YB Rajiv's office in Bukit Gasing. Yeah. So those are the main ones.
Is there still free water? Because I think for 184,000 households in Selangor, they are still entitled to first 20 cubic meters of free water, right?
No more free water.
Okay.
No more free water for 40 families.
Okay. So like YB Lim, she has mentioned, so single mothers, elderly, senior citizens, and also young people who want to get to know the role of ADUN or be involved in politics, please contact your local ADUN and state assemblyman to register for any of these that YB has mentioned. And so I think we have covered so many things about Kampung Tunku and ADUN. Maybe you can talk about something more statewide. I think water issues have weighed a lot in the national press for the past 2 years. I think last year in Selangor, we had about 3 water cuts and also a chemical waste situation in Johor, in the Kim Kim River. And then in Selangor, I think it was in Sungai Gong. So can you illustrate or elaborate on what measures have the Pakatan Harapan state government undertaken to remedy this issue?
Some of the things that we have done is to actually increase the patrolling of rivers and also by drones. Actually, I'm happy to say that in the last month or so, we've managed to, I don't have the data right now on me, but we've actually managed to staff off pollution efforts. So the people who actually brought the stuff to dump were caught on site. So it's one of the major things that we've managed to do in the past 5-6 months. So if you've noticed, there haven't been any major disruptions, touch wood, that we will all stay fully hydrated and all. But the other project that we've started January this year is actually a pipeline construction project to divert contaminated river water. So last time, one of the reasons why we had to shut off the water treatment plants is to prevent the contaminated river water from actually entering the water treatment plants and then, risking the supply quality to residents. So in the 2021 Selangor state budget, we've allocated part of the 200 million allocation to build pipes so that polluted river water can be diverted. So hopefully this will actually, avoid the water treatment plants from running out of supply and making sure that the storage water can meet demand for at least 5 days while the decontamination process is ongoing.
Okay. So basically what we have done is that we had a diversion. So we had diversion, new piping that has been laid this year to mitigate this problem.
Yeah.
In your opinion, how much is this water issue in Malaysia? Sorry?
Extra patrolling also to stop pollution efforts before they even begin. Yeah.
Yes. In your opinion, YB, how much of the water issues in Malaysia, in Selangor in particular, is attributed to chemical pollution by external parties, and how much is it due to maybe longer-term structural issues with water management?
I don't have the exact data right now. It's a bit of both. But with regards to infrastructure management also, I personally feel that we can actually speed up on the changing of water pipes. One of the
Yes.
problems we have is that we are playing catch-up ball because in the years before PH, the pipes were already old, but hadn't been maintained. So when we came in, basically like a lot of the pipes in Selangor were already reaching their expiry date, which is why we get all these bursts. And even when we install new pipes, they connect to older pipes which cannot handle the water pressure, and therefore we lead on to this cycle of bursting. I think we can be more aggressive in changing the pipes. So this is something that we will continue to push the state government on. But one of the good things coming out from the state ADUN is that we've reactivated our select committee on water management, which is headed by YB Michelle Ng, ADUN Subang Jaya. And it's actually come up with, the first time they tabled a paper, it came up with 38 different recommendations on how to improve water management, water security, and also the infrastructure. So one of the good things is some of the recommendations have been applied, which goes into the patrolling and again the pipeline project.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. Just a little bit of background to everyone who's watching. I think regarding water issues in Selangor, I think in the past, I think the three key areas they were talking about was that we had low treated water reserve margins. So maybe about 12% of treated water margins in case of emergency. And like what YB Lim has mentioned, pipe leakages, because Petaling Jaya or many parts of the pipes that were laid in Selangor are quite old. So that was also another issue. And also, what role is attributed to the federal and state agencies that are coordinating in terms of water supply? Is it also regarding, like, for example, SPAN, Federal Water Services Commission, and maybe the state is now under Selangor because they have been merged by 4 water entities? And also there is also another entity called LUAS, Selangor Water Management Corporation. So I think also partially it has to be attributed to the communication between federal, state, and between state agencies, and having a kind of whole 10 comprehensive approach towards water issues. And also, I think we have a upcoming water plant that will come online in the next 2-3 years. I think the Langat 2 water plant will come in, and that will probably increase our water to maybe 15 or 20% in terms of water reserve margin. Yeah, but like you mentioned again, I think the pipe is a big issue because I checked the numbers. Apparently, we have 32% of our water categorized as a non-revenue water. So yes, so that's like wasted water, whereby it can be the best in Denmark or Singapore or Japan for 5 to 7%. So we must maybe work towards that direction of lowering that 32% NRW. Any other comments before we move on to the next issue?
No.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so this was about a national issue. Do you have any comments about political fragmentation in Malaysia? Because personally, when I had to vote in GE, the previous GE 14, there was Pakatan Harapan on one side, and then now there was also Barisan Nasional. But now what happened in the past 2 years, we have seen fragmentation. So we might have even a two-party become a four-party system. Now we have Perikatan Nasional, we have Barisan Nasional, we have Pakatan Harapan, and also we have talks about Muda and a Warisan coalition. So what do you think about the latest changing landscape in Malaysian politics? Is there too many political parties? What's your take?
I think it's not a bad thing to have more political parties in the field. The only difficult part is there is no clear leading coalition. So it seems that there is more public anger towards PN, but PH, I have to admit, we have not been showing the leadership that people are looking for. Just today, the PH Council released a statement detailing which MPs will be in charge of certain portfolios. So I guess you could say it's a sort of informal shadow cabinet, or at least you have those spokespersons to speak out on certain issues such as education, youth, economy, and so on and so forth. I think next GE will be interesting because of the Katak phenomenon. I'm hoping that actually people might not vote so much for parties, but actually vote for candidates. Yeah, candidates that actually do work.
And have personal integrity and respect the choices of their voters, yes.
So that will be quite interesting to see. Yeah.
Yep, definitely. Thank you for your comments on that issue. So now we're moving to our final question. So there was a bit of media coverage about apparently a chauvinist Chinese faction, an English faction, a Malay-speaking faction in the Democratic Action Party. In your opinion, as an internal insider, what do you think? Do you think it's a real? Is there such a difference, or is it overblown by the media in terms of a division between factions?
There is some truth to the factions. Every party has its factions. That's not unusual. It can be like conservative versus more liberal, more right wing versus left wing. Within a party, that's normal. But I would say that this Huasa, Yingsa, so Chinese chauvinist and English faction, or like some say Oxford versus grassroots, or Oxford versus Pasar Malam, is an oversimplified debate. I think that increasingly our members do not really conform to one box, and I think it's unhelpful to draw the lines like this, because in the end, in politics or in community building or nation building, what you want to achieve is actually to build bridges. So by putting everyone in a box like, oh, you are Huasa, or oh, you don't speak Mandarin that well, so you are Yingsa, is not very helpful. So for example, for myself, like I would be considered like a Yingsa because I went to SK and I speak terrible Mandarin. But actually over the years, I have been, practicing my Mandarin and trying to reach out more, so that we can reach out and actually like know each other and build bridges. So to categorize someone like me, or similar people who have made efforts to build bridges, as just like Gingsa or Huasa or Masa, is not helpful. In the end, we are one party. We have to work together, and each group has their strengths and each group have their weakness. That's why I also don't subscribe so much to like, oh, we need to kick out all the old people within the party, that kind of thing, because there are things we can learn from each other. It's whether we want to work with each other or not.
Yep. I 100% agree with that. I think there's going to be a varying views in every single party. There are going to be some divisions, and then I think push comes to shove. The crux is how well a party manages these divisions and different points of views at least. So I think the Democratic Action Party has at least shown a very united stand since the Sheraton move, and that most of the party is still intact in its relative form in terms of MPs and ADUNs as well. So kudos and comments on that. So I think we have covered so many issues.
It's a good debate to have, and it's a necessary debate to have.
Correct.
But at the same time, I feel we shouldn't just box people in just because of their background. Yeah.
That's a very good point. Do not box people in because of their background. So with that, we have covered Kampung Tunku, local issues that happens in the particular state assembly seat. We have covered some issues like water. We have covered issues like political fragmentation and the AP as well. So right now, we would like to move on to a short Q&A session. So if anyone is interested to leave some questions, we will address a few of them right now. So, I see one now. So this lady has mentioned, what is the age group for senior citizen? What is the legal age group for senior citizen? By Rina.
60 and above.
I assume,
yeah.
Is this for the state initiatives if you want to apply for senior citizens?
Yeah, 60 and above.
Okay. So the second question we have is by Zhou. Regarding public health, what's your opinion on public hospital services compared to private hospitals? Because not everyone can afford insurance. Or is it eligible? People who take psychiatric medication. Yep. What's your opinion on public health services in the country? Generally, compared to private. Is it
public health services are quite cheap. I mean, if you go to a clinic kesihatan, then you pay RM1. And if you talk about like psychiatric medicines at a clinic kesihatan, sometimes you can leave with 30 ringgit. I mean, pay 30 ringgit to get psychiatric medicines that will cost you about 400 ringgit outside. Having said that, I think it's no secret that our public health services are quite overtaxed. There really needs to be more funding. And I think in certain cases also hospitals need to be given more autonomy into purchasing the items that they need, especially on emergency basis. So one of the experiences I had working closely with a public hospital was actually Hospital Segama in Johor. Which, fun fact, the MP was the one who, went missing and went overseas to New Zealand for 55 days. But yeah, our collaboration with Hospital Segama Johor came about because my friend is an MO in Teluk Intan who knew this MO in Segama, and this was early PKP last year. And they didn't have enough specialized ICU equipment, especially the breathing type. So we ran a fundraiser for them on the platform Sedunia for about 196,000 ringgit. And one of the things that I noticed was that they really had to jump through a lot of paperwork and hoops. And there was the question of we cannot be seen to be buying something. The external party must donate it to us. It's just quite menyusahkan, and when you're fighting a pandemic, I think hospitals should be given more autonomy to decide on what they need in terms of supplies. The other part, which is very underfunded, is mental health. I believe our finance minister announced there was this budget, I think almost 24 million for mental health. And we don't see that coming in. I personally am quite disappointed when Tengku Zafro is okay, green ribbon awareness, come and look for us if you need help. But budgets haven't come in. And for a lot of mental health patients, what they need now is not awareness. It's more of, I need my ICNA to come in on time. I need my JKM help bantuan to come in on time. And that's all not being done. Yeah.
Yep. I see there's
But
a
in
lot
terms
of work.
of insurance, which Joe mentioned, actually, an increasing number of insurers are providing insurance for those with mental health conditions. So you have AIA and Etika, which are the ones I can name right now. Yeah.
So as we move on to our next question, what is the criteria to apply for KISS for single mothers?
Criteria, you must earn under 2,000 ringgit household income, and you still must have children under the age of 18. Yeah. You have to apply for at the ADUN's office that you vote for. Yeah.
Thank you, YB. As for the next question, maybe we'll just take this one and just the next one, and then we'll be done and wrap up. So the next question we have is, what is your opinion on the possibility of making vaccinations mandatory in Malaysia? Is this done on a Taman basis?
Possibility of making vaccinations mandatory. That unfortunately is not up to me. It's up to the JKJAV. But
Yeah.
I would not force people to take the vaccine. That's the thing. Because people still have bodily autonomy. But I like what you say about going from Taman to Taman. I think the JKJAV, which is the National Vaccination Program Committee, could do a lot more in terms of outreach. So in terms of information dissemination, and also making sure that non-digital communities such as senior citizens, the orang asli, rural folks are vaccinated. So recently I've been seeing a lot of like posts coming from Sabah and Sarawak where they say, oh, this like 60, 70-year-old aunties traveled like 100 km to get their vaccination. And everyone's like, oh, that's so cute. But actually, we shouldn't be romanticizing this, Why should they travel so far to get their vaccine? Why aren't we having volunteers to go to them to actually make sure they are vaccinated? The same thing applies with Kelantan, where recently there was an announcement where a lot of Kelantanis who had registered for the vaccine through MySejahtera were not turning up for their appointments. So what's the government doing about that? Are we just going to sit and say, oh, you all didn't come for your appointments, are so low, that's why COVID is still spreading? Or are we willing to actually let's say have a bus and go down into a taman or kampung and make sure everyone is vaccinated? Yeah. So there was something I saw interesting in New York under
Okay.
AOC's kawasan,
Yes.
so Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez kawasan, where they actually modify a bus in New York City, and they're going from like borough to borough. So they modified the bus so you have those injection vaccination stations and also a place to wash your hands and all. So yeah, why can't we do that here?
That's a very good answer, YB. I think the next question is covered already in the previous answer about public health. Maybe just very briefly, can we have universal healthcare in Malaysia? Do you have any other comments on that, just generally? I think we have universal healthcare in Malaysia at an affordable price, but maybe the price, the shortage of beds and medical personnel and officers in the hospitals are the main issue here.
I think for primary healthcare, we are quite okay because of the prevalence of clinic kesihatan and, like you said, the low cost. It's actually the specialized care which provides more of a barrier to people. So, for example, like those with dialysis issues or lung issues. So yeah, that's actually the bigger issue. And it also speaks to funding and manpower.
Okay. Yep. I think we have covered all the questions for today. So before we end today's session, we would like to make a small shout out to all the mothers who are watching here today, all mothers across Malaysia and abroad. Very happy Mother's Day to you. Thank you for watching today's section. Happy Mother's Day. Hope you continue to spend your time with your loved ones. Thank you for your love and sacrifice. Thank you so much, including my mom who's watching out there. So with that, I would like to thank everyone for joining both YB Lim Yi Wei and me today. Thank you for spending your precious weekend with us. Please follow YB Lim Yi Wei on Facebook, Instagram. Keep in touch with the community events that she runs. Sometimes they're online during MCO, but after MCO, they can be found as well in Petaling Jaya. As for this show, we will continue to engage civil society and have grassroots conversations like this one. Please subscribe to us on YouTube and Facebook as well. We hope to bring international speakers. So with that, thank you so much. Stay healthy, stay safe, have a great weekend ahead.
Some info.